Okay, we're live. I just got out of makeup. All right. This is Mark coming to you from Baker's Green Acres, promptly at 8 o'clock. Feeling pretty good. It is 8 o'clock. It's 78 degrees out here in lovely northern Michigan. Let's see. I got something I want to talk about tonight, and I think it'd be helpful. Next thing is going to be Tribe Day, and that is the weekend after the 4th of July. So the 4th this year falls on a Friday. So Tribe Day begins just after noon on the 11th. And then the 12th is the big day. And we'll see what happens on Sunday. Sometimes we got to kick people out of here. But Tribe Day is for people that are in the Anyone Can Farm tribe. And it's a day when we come together. We open up the farm. People can camp here. We've got a campground next door. And it's just a fun time. I don't know. Is this going to be the 4th year? Somebody refresh my memory here. We got Keith with us so far. Says Keith, Jill, I need the thing that you were going to send me. Thanks again. That was awesome stuff. Okay. Well, I don't know what that was about. Keith came and got bread today for his pigs. I didn't really see Keith because I was out cutting hay today. So that's one of the things, a major thing in our operation, cutting hay. The majority of what is grown here is grass. And that's really a good thing. It's really a good thing. And I'm going to kind of get into that. Let's see. I wanted to do a little bit of math here real quick. I got 25 bales today times 750 pounds, 18,750. And I'm going to divide that by 30. And that gives me 625 cow days. All right, 625. And if I divide that by 10, let's say I'm feeding 10 cows, that's going to give me 62.5 days. 62.5 days. So today I harvested, I did put the finishing touches on it, about 2 months worth of hay for my dairy cows. And the way I figure that out is in the wintertime, or when they're not on pasture, which they are right now, they eat about 30 pounds of hay a day. You can count on that. And so I started cutting hay. Let's see. When did I cut that down? I cut that down last Friday. And then I think I raked it Monday. Yeah, I raked it Monday. And here it is Tuesday. And I started baling yesterday about 4 o'clock. And I got about halfway done baling it. And I'm looking at the weather report, and it was supposed to be rainy today. Supposed to rain. I think my face looks a little dirty. So I was kind of up against that. Once you have it cut and raked and it's dried, if it gets rained on, you can ruin it. And I've done that. That has happened to me. Now, if everything goes right, that shouldn't happen. But in anything that we do, especially with machinery, cutting hay, I'm working with a hay bine, and that's the cutter. That's what cuts it. That's the mower. And then a rake, and that's what you put it into rows and poof it up so it will dry. And then a baler. And all three of those equipment are fairly complicated pieces of equipment, a lot of moving parts, and you're working them hard, and they all have to be pulled with a tractor. The baler has a PTO shaft, so the tractor has to run properly. The mower also has a PTO shaft, and it's got a lot of gears and chains and stuff, and they all have to work properly. And the equipment that I have is not brand new, not even close. It's some of it is 40 years old. But components, it's just a compilation of components. And if a component goes bad, you change out that component. And you can expect to get X amount of service out of a component. So once you've gone through it by using it, and you've changed all the belts and pulleys and gears and things like that, you're in pretty good shape. You kind of know the equipment. So that's what I embarked on. I had no problems cutting. I had no problems raking. I got about halfway through baling yesterday afternoon, and I had 16 bales on the ground, 750-pound bales, and all of a sudden I see this spray of hydraulic oil. So I pull it back over to where my truck is, and that's where the tools are and stuff. And it's over by the cabin. That's where we've been kind of staging everything, and the boys are working over there, and so I'm working out of there. And then, it's nice. This is on the next door property, right adjacent to the campground. And I dig into it a little bit, and I find out that one of the shafts has been riding on a steel line for 40 years, and it finally wore through, and it made just a little hole, just a pinhole. I mean, you could probably push a pin into it, and it was right under that shaft, so that line had to come out. So I start pulling it out of there as quick as I can, but it's kind of too late in the day, so it was probably 6:30 when I was doing it. Just is really perfect for baling because it's cool then, and you're starting to get a little bit more moisture in the air. And I thought, man, I'm home free on this. And this is just a 10-acre field. This is not the entire operation. I am just starting. And I realized pretty quick that I'm done. I'm done for the day. And so I pulled that line out, and then I'm kind of fretting, like, where am I going to get this line from? And so this morning when I got up, I had to tackle that problem. And the way it turned out is I wound up replacing that line with a flexible line that they made for me over at Ebels. Yeehaw, Ebels. Randy over there made it for me and put it in, and it worked flawlessly. And then that was probably just before lunch by the time I got that all together. Now, mind you, we're still doing everything else too. We still have to, the cows have to be milked. All the milk has to be prepared, put in jars, filtered, all that stuff. And so I wasn't on that detail. Oh, I was on that detail this morning, but Jill took my place because this job had to be done by me. So I got that all squared away. It took 2 trips over to Ebels to get it done, because the first trip over, I thought I could just patch the line and I could get away with it. And it didn't work. And so I wound up going back and getting a flex line. And that was $56 to do that. But I got it, put it on. First bale, the stringer which is run by an electric motor, quit. Didn't want to work. And so I did what I could where I was. I went through it, found out that in the control box, I had blown a fuse. And that was something that I had probably done when I hooked it up. So I didn't realize that at first, though. So I pulled the motor off and I checked it. I put a meter on the electric line going to it. I was getting plenty of power, but I just wasn't getting what I needed. So I thought that the motor had finally given up. So I took the motor off and down to a motor repair shop that's down from me about 20 miles, just on 66. And I was so fortunate there. He must have looked at me and said, "A hydraulic oil on him, looks like he's in the middle of cutting hay, And so he took the motor, he put it on the bench, and he checked it with his meter, and he said, "Ooh, there's nothing wrong with this." And then he hooked it up to a power source, and it worked fine. So I'm lucky that he did that. I am really lucky. So on my way back from there, I'm troubleshooting it, and I'm thinking, well, it must be something else. And so I dug into the control box. Sure enough, I found a fuse that was pooched. So I didn't have one of those fuses. It's kind of an old-fashioned fuse. And so I had to kind of work around the fuse, if you know what I mean. So I did. I put a piece of wire in there, and I was able to go. But the gist of the story is I finished that field, and I've got 85% chance of rain tomorrow. And if I had not finished that field, I could have lost all that hay. And that was bad. So there was a feeling of urgency. But along the way, I learned things that I didn't know about my baler. And I've been using it for 20 years now. You'd think I would know it by now, but I learned some new things. I must admit, though, when I came over here for lunch, I wasn't the most talkative guy, but I maintained, they didn't, my family didn't cause the problem, and they should not, get yelled at for something that they didn't do. And so I didn't. I was good. I was good about it, And I even said, well, boys, when you're cutting hay, if you're not having problems, you're not really cutting hay. So I like to tell you these things so you kind of get the feeling of what goes on around here. It isn't smooth sailing all the time. There are days when it's smooth, but it's not smooth because the stars align. It's smooth because we're constantly knocking down problems and then fixing the hot spots. We're fixing the hot spots always, constantly. We have a problem, we fix it, shouldn't have that problem again. So you fix it right, or as right as you can, and then you press on. But what I want to talk about today, actually my day buttressed what I want to talk about. And so I want a little interaction on this presentation, right? Because this came to me. And as I've said to you before, if I don't have anything to say, I could still be picking bales up over there and bringing them over here and getting them in before they get rained on. I could be doing that right now. And that to me is a good time because I put the tunes on, have a nice bottle of cold Baker's Green Acres water with me. Jill's going to be getting home, and she's probably going to cook me something really nice tonight. And so I have a lot to look forward to. I have it made, actually. I have it made in the shade. But I think I have something to pass on to you. And some of the people that are in this group, I know you well. And I know the things that you're up against in this career field. This is a career field. And so we had a conversation this morning, and it's just beautiful outside. We got up, me and Jill got up at Jill got up before me, but I got up 7. And I made my way out here with my first cup of coffee and plopped down out here on the porch, and the pool is, it's there, and I'm gonna go in it, that's for sure. Water level on it was kind of low, so I walked around it, and the filter where I had done my repair last week gave out, so we lost a lot of water out of it, but no big deal. I'll fix it again tomorrow in the rain and get it going again. But we drank our coffee and we got to talking, and I knew what I had ahead of me today. I knew it. I knew what I had to do. And I know when you're cutting hay, things happen, belts break, just things happen. And that's just the way it is. When you're going to have things happen. I look at it like, well, I didn't have anything happen when I was cutting. I mean, you can always hit a stone, and then you've got to take the machine apart, and then you've got to put a new section in, and you got to, it's a process to do it. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. I've been cutting over here since, let's see, this will be 3 years. Yeah, 3 years, or maybe 4. This is going to be the 4th year. So I know the places to stay away from. It's becoming like, in my mind, I have a map of where I'm going to go and where I'm not going to go, because there's some wet places over there and you can wind up in real trouble. So I kind of know more about what I'm doing, so I'm more comfortable cutting over there. And yeah, I had some problems, but it had nothing to do with being over there. It had to do with the equipment. A line that wears through after 40 years. Well, you can't really shake your hand at the sky over that one. That's not something that I felt real like, oh, God hates me here. I didn't. But then the motor going, it wasn't the motor, it was a fuse. But I had no idea whether there was a fuse in that control box. I don't spend much time in that control box. There's just a switch on it that I use, right? I don't go with my baler is not an automatic baler, an automatic stringer. I have to turn around and watch the strings come across and say, yep, good enough. And then stop it and then hit the cutter. The cutter's a part of that too. You got to cut the strings, and sometimes that works really good, time after time after time. But then sometimes it just doesn't cut. So then I got to get in there and sharpen the cutters up and all that stuff. So there's a million things that can go wrong, and when it doesn't go wrong, hey, that's a good day. That's a day to pat yourself on the back and buy yourself a cold one. That's a good day. Excuse me. But that's my philosophy. But if you were here, you'd say, and you could get inside my head, you'd say, that's what you're saying. But I know what you were thinking. Yeah, I was. I was thinking, this old equipment. Seems like my neighbors just make it happen. You drive around and you see guys just littered with bales out on their field. And it seems like they never have problems like this. Of course, I don't know that. And those guys are lifelong guys. I do this once a year, and I have for 21 years. This is the 21st year that I've done it. And the first few years, oh boy, I get PTSD from thinking about those first years. Honestly, PTSD. I get triggered. I really get triggered when I think about it. So I still have a little bit of that PTSD when I have to go out and cut hay. And so the tendency is to think, oh, it's going to be a total failure. Oh, I'm going to have to ask for help, which I have had to before. I have. And, when I talked it over with my neighbor, well, his son, he said, you panicked. And I said, you're right. I did. I panicked. Like my hay bind was not getting through it. But why wasn't my hay bind getting through it? I mean, it's not like the hay is different now than it was in 1968 when that was built. It should go through it. But I panicked. And yeah, there was reasons when I think back on that. I wasn't cutting the right time of day. I waited too long and it got too thick, So there was reasons why I wasn't making it through it. And I'm not going to do those things anymore if I can help it. So what I want to talk about tonight in our conversation this morning was austerity versus abundance. You think about those two words. And think them through. And you can have an austerity mindset. And an austerity mindset is not a frugal mindset. Now, you become frugal if you live in austerity. If that's your home and austerity is your home, you're going to be very frugal. But you can be frugal even if you live in abundance. Why? Why would you want to be frugal if you live in abundance? Well, we're going to talk about that. And I would covet your input on this. I would covet your input on this right here. And what I have done, see, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just, through our conversation this morning, I realized this is where I've arrived. This is where I've arrived. And I'm starting to see a level of success. And so I reverse engineer it in my head, like, well, what did I do right? Like there was a lot of years here early on where we were like a ship without a rudder on it. We would say, well, there's an island over there. Let's go that direction. But that would turn out to be, well, it's not what it looked like. So let's not continue to go there. Let's adjust our course here. And let's look for something else. And we did that a lot. There was a time when I saw what my neighbors do, what the farming community does. And I even talked with a guy that used to work at the auto parts store. And he said to me, you just need to do one thing really good and do a lot of it. Oh, okay. I guess I'll take that advice. And at that time, we were pretty good at pastured poultry. We had a system. It wasn't as good as the system that we have now, but it was good, and we were having a level of success. The predation had dropped off because we got our first Great Pyrenees. And that came from Daniel Salatin, actually, because I saw him at a farm conference, and I said, I'm about ready to quit this because we're getting beat up so bad by predators, right? We even went to a store where they sell Army Navy surplus stuff, and I was inquiring about a night scope, a Starlight, because I thought, I'm going to win here. This is war. I'm going to kill every single last one of them. And so I could see myself on the barn roof, with a thermos of coffee and a rifle and just killing just killing all night long, and then we'll win. Looking back on that, seemed like a good idea, but it really wasn't a good idea because you're not going to kill all of the predators, because as soon as you make a gap in the predator population, others will move into it, and they'll smell those chickens too, and they'll say, dinner time, we're going. So it wasn't a good idea, but that was my mindset back then. We'll get a fire control tower going, we'll get up there and we'll have a good kill, and we will just shoot. And but that wasn't a good idea. That was like a war mindset. It was totally incorrect for this. I mean, they're not Viet Cong, right? So we were getting pretty good at that. And so we took that advice. And at one time, we had 30 chicken tractors. We were raising a lot of chickens. We wound up having a customer in Traverse City that was a distributor. And we worked ourselves into a place where if they didn't take our chickens, we had no place to sell them. You know, we had one customer. That wasn't good, because not too long after we were in pretty deep with them, they started to dictate things like, we want to know who your insurance provider is, you know, because their insurance provider wanted. So it started going down that road. And then they said, oh, this drain here, you know, this has to be plumbed over to the drain field. It can't just dump on the floor and then, you know, go down the drain, which it has done that forever. It still does. I have it piped over there, but still there's a gap, and you hear the water go, and it goes down to the drain field. It's perfectly acceptable to me, but I don't think it would be to an insurance company or anybody else that would come in and look around. They'd say, well, you can't have that. Like, why? You know, it's not going to back up. The drain field is 50 feet away, and there's a sewer line that goes down to it, and then it dumps into a tank, and that tank has a leach field. Why? You know, but I'm sure some overeducated blue-haired person would say, well, you can't have that. You know, you just can't, because you're releasing pathogens into the air and they could get on the, you know, they have their dumb reasons. But they do fit into this talk. They do fit into this talk. So if we could, so I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you where we have landed, and it's working. And now all of a sudden I can kind of package it and say, we're going to look at this package again whenever we need to make a decision, and we're going to go the direction of abundance and not go the direction of austerity. Austerity is, let's say there's a situation, a bad storm, and so you can't get through the road to get the supplies that you need. So, okay, we're going to limit how much water you guys drink, because we don't have that much. Or you have to get off of a boat in the middle of the ocean and you're in a lifeboat, right? That's an austere condition. You don't have the shelter that you need, and you don't have the food and water that you need, and you don't know when you're going to get rescued. You don't know when that's going to happen. So you have to limit what you do, right? And so with that austerity comes an austerity mindset. You know, if you are in the lifeboat, everybody's asleep, and you're hungry, and you say, we'll probably get rescued this afternoon. And so you get into all the stores and you just chow them down. Everybody wakes up and they're like, you did what? You know, because people do react correctly a lot of times. When is it that we react incorrectly? When is that? Well, the guy that ate all the supplies, he's like, well, I think we will. I mean, I've seen this in the movies. People get rescued all the time. Well, what if you don't? You know, austerity mindset is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. It is a reaction, right? But who wants you in an austerity mindset? Right? So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that where we live, like my farm, let's say, was created. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it was created. Every bug, every amoeba, every blade of grass, all the cattle that are here. There's not many. There's under 20. Like 10 milk cows, not even 10. I have probably 8. Yeah, 8. And then we have a couple heifers out there that will freshen at some point. Was all created with a design in mind. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, for our atheist friends, right? Our Big Bang people. Okay, but even Big Bang, there seems to be a design here. But let's just say it was created by a designer that doesn't hate us, that loves us. And I think if the designer hated us, I probably would have been designed with 5 pinkies or 5 thumbs on my hand. But I wasn't. I was designed with a thumb and 4 fingers, and it's pretty darn useful. These hands are pretty darn useful. Without them, that'd be tough. It'd be tough. Did the designer place us someplace in austerity? Am I in austerity measures right now on just a day-to-day? Ooh, no, I'd have to say no to that. I mean, just look around. Look at all this grass that's just coming up out of the ground. I mean, I harvested enough grass today for 650 cow days. My cows can be fed off that for 2 months. 2 months. And I need to feed cows in the wintertime. Let's say November, December, January, February, March, April. That's about it. So 6 months. That I always figure 6 months. I might be a little early, and I might have to go a little long. But a lot of times, like this year, we were out in May 1st, we were out, or May something like that. We were out, and we had to be because the cows start leaning over the fence. They're not interested in their hay anymore. It's their time to start eating green grass, and they're going to start leaning over the fence. So, 6 months. I've already got 2 of those months knocked out. 2 of them knocked out. And it's just the first foray. And so I can look at that with an austerity mindset, like, well, I only got 2 months, or I can look at it as, well, that's only 10 acres of the probably 60 that I need to cut. And it's only the first cutting. So looking at it from an abundance mindset, it's like, oh, I could definitely cut more hay off of this than I could possibly feed to the cattle that I have, right? But why am I? Yeah, but you only have 10. You're only milking 10 cows. Well, I only need to milk 10 cows. 10 cows, when they're up and chugging, that's 30-something gallons of milk a day. 30-something gallons of milk a day at $10 is $300 a day. I mean, I'm going to share my numbers with you. Watch, it's a small group anyway. How much more money do you need to make? 300 a day times 7, 21 times, let's do this. I want to do this right. 21 times 52. You don't need more than that. I mean, that's fat right there. And that's just milk, right? Ain't no money in farming, right? Ain't no money in farming. And that's just milk. That's not pigs. That's not beef. I mean, it's crazy what they say. But how do you get here? Because as we talked last week, there was a guy in the tribe that went off on, I think it's time to quit. I think it's time to quit. So, and then I talked about quitting, and I talked about not quitting, and I talked about what happens when you do quit. It's not good. If you purposely, I would like some involvement here. Let's have some involvement. I think if I were going to do this, if I was going to listen to somebody that is making it in farming, if I was going to listen to anybody, I would listen to somebody that's making it, not somebody who gave up, who quit. I wouldn't listen to that guy. Not if I want to make it. Not if I want to make it. Not if I want to be successful. And does that mean follow right in my footsteps? Do exactly what I do? Well, you could, but what happens when I kick off? Then what are you going to do? You have to develop your own mindset to be a winner, not a loser. You don't want to be a loser. And I'm not saying that guy just put it on Facebook. He shouldn't have. And I'm not saying he's a loser. He's definitely a winner, but he succumbed to the austerity mindset, because the austerity mindset, where does it come from? Somebody, there's a saying, it's cui bono. And that is another language that you don't know, that guys who smoke cigars say. It's Latin. David, you should know that. And what does it mean? It means who benefits? Who benefits? Like anything, you can say, I wonder who benefits from this. Anything comes out. Oh, there's a riot in LA. Do you think that's organic? If somebody started that stuff, who benefits from it? Let's answer that question. But I don't have time to do that, because that has a tendency to take my focus away from what I'm doing that is fruitful. If I figured out that, that's George Soros, all right, he's the one that did that. And let's say I know. So, who am I going to do? Tell my neighbor? That's George Soros. I just wasted time telling him that, I mean, it's not like I won't talk about this if someone says, well, what do you think of this? Well, it's like if they ask me, what do you think about, a particular snowmobile? Well, I happen to like Polaris's, because I do. I like the way they look. I like the name Polaris. I like their logos and stuff. Plus, the first snowmobile I ever had was a Polaris. So I like Polaris's. And I used to work for a guy that was a Polaris freak. And I always think about him when I'm contemplating buying another snowmobile. So but I don't make my living off snowmobiles. I don't work for Polaris. They don't send me money to endorse their product. And I'm not really into that anyway, because let's say somebody calls me and says, hey, would you endorse this drink? And we will pay you X amount of dollars per year to just have it sitting on the table there when you're doing your thing. I'd say no. And I have endorsed stuff because I started going down that road. Like, hey, this whole, I want in on this. It's like a popularity contest, right? I want in on this. I want to get the likes. I want to get the views and all that stuff until I finally like, what am I doing? That's not what I'm here to do. It didn't feel right anyway. It didn't feel right. Like a guy said to me, "Well, it seems like your Facebook thing or your internet thing's going pretty good." I said, "What do you mean?" Your videos that you make are pretty good. I said, "I just do that for kicks. I don't make any money off that. I just do it for fun. Show and tell, gets it out there. Like maybe somebody else will take it and run with it. Good. We need that. We need people doing real stuff, not virtual stuff. It needs to be real stuff that you can eat. That's real stuff. But let me stay with this austerity versus abundance mindset. Okay, so sometimes when somebody is constantly pushing an austerity mindset at you, Department of Agriculture, and they seem well-funded and they seem to know what they're talking about. They all have college degrees, so I guess we better listen to them. And they seem to know the way. I mean, they drive a car with a logo on the side that says Department of Agriculture. I mean, you can't get a job there unless you know agriculture. Can you? I wouldn't think so. But I don't think so. I think you can get a job there. Matter of fact, the guy that was the inspector around here, he used to be in the Peace Corps. And then I got to know him through a chain of events. He was friends with friends of ours from the farmers market, and they were very liberal people, but they did have a defeatist mindset. I remember that, and I think that's pretty consistent with liberal people, unless they wind up in a gig that's paying them a lot of money, and it's usually in fields that are destructive, is what I've seen. I've seen some of those fields are very destructive or government funded, and the government seems to be very destructive. Yeah. So, this guy was in the Peace Corps, and then he needed a job, not in the Peace Corps anymore. So who's hiring? Department of Agriculture. Well, he didn't know anything about agriculture. He just had some weird degree from the university. So we need a guy. Here you go. Here's your car, here's your computer. You go around and you sell these licenses to people. There's a checklist of the things that you need to say. And you love your job, right? Oh, yeah, I love my job. Okay. So be dedicated and be our guy. And so I guess he did. And we were friends. But then when he took up with them, it's like, we're not friends now. Your organization sucks. And you're really the anti-agricultural people. I remember they were trying to sell me on this deal. You see people with these signs out in front of their farms that says environmentally certified. And they sell you on it. And the way they sell it is, well, if you follow our protocol and then somebody sues you for an environmental infraction, then you can use us as a go-to to say that he's environmentally certified. He couldn't be polluting the streams because he's environmentally certified. You see that sign out in front of his house? Where do you think that sign came from? Oh, we gave him a grant of $500 to buy that sign, and we make them too. It's totally a scam. But you can kind of pick the people out that have those signs in front of their houses. My neighbor, actually, he's still got his Kamala Waltz sign out. He's been flying his American flag upside down since the election. It has a light on it and everything. And the other day he put out a bunch of boxes in front of his house. I thought he was moving, you know. I waved to him and stuff, but I don't. He's really out in left field. And he wrote on those big boxes, "No Kings," and he put that out in front of his house for Saturday for the No Kings March. Totally organic, right? But he's got one of them things out in front of his house, and he's taking money from them, put up the greenhouses and all this stuff, and nothing seems to work. And he just winds up just working a job, a job. And when you do that, a lot of times a job can be, that's austerity mindset. It's like, well, I cannot do anything else, but I can do this job. And I know a lot of people have jobs. I had a job for a long time too, until I broke out of it. And I said, there's way more out there. There's way more out there. But when I defer to this job, it's like they have me for 9 hours a day, the best part of the day. And then I get a couple hours at the end, but I'm tired and irritated. And I got to be there again tomorrow, for $16 an hour, $18 an hour. I don't care if it's $20 an hour. It's not enough. It's not a place where you can get and stand on top of the hill and say, wow, there's a lot out here to conquer yet. There's a lot out here. There's so much out here. Because when you limit yourself to that job, you stop right there. You might have a little bit of time when you can think, well, I think I'd like to go to the lake this weekend. I got a little extra money after I pay all my bills. I know. I'll go get a loan and get a boat. And then I'll be out with everybody else that's got payments on their boats, but don't really have money for fuel or even good quality beer. I'll have to be drinking a Busch Light or a Wes. So you wind up in a place because of that austerity mindset that you don't really want to be, but it's better than it was last year, a little bit, where with the abundance mindset, you're getting up in the morning and thinking, what could happen today? What could I step in today? Good thing that I could step in today. What could I step in today that's really good? So in the course of my travels today and my breakdowns, it started to creep in, I need to have a disc bind. I could probably go in debt on that. I mean, it would be a good idea, right? I could do that. And I started thinking, a different tractor. I need a bigger tractor and all of that. And then I was moving some stuff around in the dirt. And I found this. No kidding. I found this. Now that is a shoe that goes on a mule. So the last person that farmed this farm seriously, like for a living, was a man by the name of Ben Brinks. And he used mules. Now he came here from Chicago. He was, from what I've gathered, a teamster. So he knew draft animals. He hauled trash, garbage in Chicago. So those animals have to be under control, and they're hauling heavy loads. Every day they're picking up garbage and hauling it someplace to do something with it. So he was a teamster. So he understood that, and that was something that he had going for him. Who knows? He might have started there when he was a kid. And I believe he came here when he had 5 children. So when I had 5 children, I was 38. But I didn't marry my wife when I was 16 either, right? I was quite a bit older. No, I was older than that. I was older than that when I had 5 kids. We had 5 when we moved here. I was 43 when we moved here. So, but he moved here when he had 5, and then he had 3 more. There was 8 kids, same as what we did. He got an earlier start. And I don't know that much about him. I'd like to know more about him because he did a lot of work here, and I'm standing on his shoulders. He pulled all the stumps, built the barn. I don't think he built it by himself, but he did build this house. They actually built the foundation, and they lived in the basement while they were building the house. And before that, they lived in a shack that was just inside the barn. And we still find kids' toys because the kids would play in the barn, in the dirt there, right? So it was very important to have the barn first because then you put cows in there, and then the milk starts going out by the road, and now you start getting some income, and now you can build the house. Now you can put a well in. Now you can, it went like that. So the needs of the animals was taken care of first, and the people were second, actually. But it wasn't, he didn't have an austerity mindset. He had an abundance mindset. They moved here and were able to start making a living, right? This land, the 80 acres that I'm on, they were homes, the Homestead Act. He had to just come here and stake his claim and then start to improve it and have a payment on the land. They weren't paying taxes back then either on the land. So, like, who owned the land? He had right to that land, I say. Now we're in a different situation where I was talking with somebody last week, and she was saying, you can't even buy land where I live. You can't. It's too expensive. You can't get going in farming. Well, that's a bit defeatist. When I bought this land, it seemed like a lot. Doesn't now, with the price of lands now. But at the time, it was like, that's going to be tough every month. But we persevered through, and now the land is worth far more. But, I'm glad we made our move when we did. So let's say land now is $3,500 an acre around here. I would get it. I don't think it's going to go south. I don't think it's going to go down. And what will $3,500 be 2 years from now? And it's, land does not lose its intrinsic value. You may think, well, I can't buy it now. Well, when will you be able to buy it? I don't know. I think that's the thing that you have to look at hard. I'm not in a position right now where I have to think about that. So I don't have many thoughts on that. It's not a problem for me now. I've gone through that. And so now my focus is on other things. And I wanted to say, when you make the decision that you're going to have an abundance mindset, when you make that decision, because it is a decision, you can still fall back into, oh, this sucks. Land's too expensive. I can't. Equipment breaks. There's nobody that I can call to come and fix the equipment. I can't do it. I guarantee you won't be able to do it because you're going to start fulfilling that mindset, right? That austerity mindset. You're going to look for a reason to quit, and then you'll do it. Oh, I can't. I go to the dealership and they don't want to extend me credit. Well, I wouldn't extend you credit either. With a mindset like that, I wouldn't. It would be a bad investment. But if you have a can-do attitude, and what is that? What is that? What is that can-do attitude? All right, I made a good demonstration of that this morning. I had a line that went, a hydraulic line, sprayed hydraulic fluid everywhere, emptied the tractor. So I was dead in the water because I couldn't even use the tractor to feed last night because I blew out all the hydraulic fluid. It's a smaller tractor, so it doesn't have a lot, but it's got 5 gallons. I blew that out, and so the tractor was dead in the water. I couldn't lift the bucket up. I could run the engine and I could move it, but I had no hydraulics. So then I kind of thought, well, I'm just going to see if I can patch this line. And I did the best I could to put a patch on it. And then I put it all back together. I fired it up. Wasn't leaking as much, but it was still leaking too much to be able to use it. And I had put 5 gallons of hydro in. That was $46, right? So I wasn't going to run that out on the field just to make, another 10 bales, 15 bales. I wasn't going to do it. So I said, well, that didn't work. So what's next? And as I'm going to Ebels, I'm thinking, when I was there this morning, the guy said to me, you got steel lines on that, or do you have flexible lines? And I said, I got steel lines and I kind of want to stay with them. But as I was putting, I took that steel line out, patch on it, put it back in. I'm thinking, I got plenty of room to run a flexible line. So on my way over there, I'm thinking, well, I'm just going to put a flexible line on it. And I was looking on the shelf. I found the line. Line was cheap, but there was no ends on it. And I looked through the shelves. I couldn't find it. Gail came over and said, do you need help? And I said, I sure do. I sure do. And she sent Randy over. And Randy looked and he says, well, I can make you one. So we went back. They got machines back there to make lines. And he made me one. Like, it took 2 minutes to make me a line. Any length you want. Not a problem for Randy. So the can-do attitude is like, well, I'm going to make these bales today. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to make these bales. So I'm not going to quit. But if I had an austerity mindset, I would have said, well, that's it. This thing's broke. I can't do it. Dead in the water. Might as well go and watch reruns of The View. At least it'll make me feel good. But I'm kidding there. If you do watch reruns of The View, I think The View, I only watched clips of it, actually, but it's sort of like a defeatist mindset. They'll show you some guy doing something, like President Trump. They'll show him doing something or saying something, and then you get to say, oh, nothing's going to happen to him. He's going to keep on doing that. Nothing's going to happen to him. But even on our side of the fence, I heard about some things that Letitia James did, right? And it was outrage what she's done. And so you get kind of bulled up inside and think, people get away with murder. Wait a minute, she wasn't trying to murder me. She ripped off, I don't know, somebody for something, government money. No, I'm not going to see a difference in anything, but you take it in and you say, these people never get held accountable. And it just, all it does is slow you down, and it destroys your productivity. It destroys your abundant mindset. I could just see, well, I'm kind of seeing a scenario in the Garden of Eden, right? And I've said to you before, I don't know if that story is true. I really don't, but it's a good story. And I can just see they had it made. They had it made in the shade. They got to spend time with the God of the universe to understand, what do you want me to do here? What do you want us to do? And he's like, yeah, well, this whole thing is for you. You get to enjoy each other's company, eat all you want. You can even name these animals if you want. I'll go with it. And he said, but don't do that over there. Don't get involved in that. That end of town is not good. Don't do that. And the snake convinced the woman, this is the way the story goes, that he's holding out on you. It could be better. It could be a lot better. He's holding out on you. All you got to do is take a bite out of this apple, and you will know everything that he knows. Little lie, right? I kind of think that when you have an mindset, which comes from there ain't no money in farming, you're never going to make a living on doing that. You're just going to kill yourself, and you're never going to get anywhere with that. When you take that in and it becomes part of your mindset, other things can take root in you because of that. And I think one of the main things that can take root in you is fear. Fear is something that's programmed into us that is a good thing. I'm glad we have fear. Like little kids don't have fear, so they'll walk right up to the edge of a cliff and just stand and look around. They have no fear. Us, people have fallen off that cliff, or maybe some Black Lives Matter person will push you off that or whatever. So you're a little like, I'm not going to get too close to that, right? That's a good thing. It's a good thing. But others, the snakes, they can twist that around a little bit and throw it at you. And that fear can take root in your heart. It can take root in your being, right? In your being, right? So a statement like, oh, this could escalate quickly. Department of Ag loves that one. Or you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. Just that statement that's shot at you like an arrow can take root in you. It can. But if you have an abundance mindset and you see this hollow person saying something like that to you, somebody who has bought into austerity, they have bought into the lie, and they are even promoters of the lie. Do you think they really want to do that? No. They just don't believe in themselves to go any further than getting a job working for the Department of Ag. And the Department of Ag, I'm just using them as an example because they have a special place in my heart. They're no different than any of the bureaucrats. They really aren't. They produce nothing. They produce nothing. They just push an agenda. Now, they could push a really good agenda. I've known a decent extension agent in my day that give out some good information. I've known them. Yeah, they're not all horrible people. They're not. But there's quite a few of them that are just kind of lackadaisical. They don't know anything. They slid through college, got some BS college degree, and now, well, these guys are hiring. So I might as well. And they pay pretty good too, like on the scale of, you could get a job working at a farm, let's say, where you'd have to work hard every day and do what you're told. But, I can work for this bureaucracy and they don't even know if I don't show up. I can work from home. And they get paid. The eagle poops every 2 weeks, they get paid. So, and you can't fire them. It's a crazy place. Those bureaucracies are just gross to work at. And those people, they wind up being gross and they have gross lives. They don't love their lives. They don't feel productive. There's a gap in the human heart to produce. And the non-producers, they just die. They just die off. So when they're pushing that austerity mindset, they don't mind throwing a fib at you, like, "Oh, this could escalate quickly. Oh, you could wind up in a lot of trouble. Oh, you listen to that guy, boy, you're going to get yourself in some real trouble." Again, cui bono. They're trying to you. They're trying to move your mindset. They're trying to manipulate you. They don't want you to look around and say, "Hey, I'm in the Garden of Eden here, man. Go away." They don't want you to do that. They want to hook you in to make you think that we are your ticket to abundance. You do it through us, it's legal, it's clean. Nobody can get you except us. We can. We can shut this down if you don't plumb this place properly or have the coatings on the wall that are we prescribe as the best coatings to have on the wall or things of that nature. You once you bite into that apple from those guys, they own you. They get to be the boss. They get to tell you what to do. That's why I'm so dead set against that. And it's not like you have to really arm wrestle them to stay out of it. They make you an offer, like the snake did with the apple here. And then they buttress their offer with all kinds of things. Yeah, if you get sued, we'll be here. Well, I'm going to get sued? What am I going to get sued for? Oh, this world is crazy. Yeah, you could get sued. You could lose everything. But, with this sign out in front of your place and having gone through our protocol, it will work for you in court. Yeah, work for you in court. Really? So you'll be there with me in court? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's funny. The guy down the road that's flying his flag upside down, his says cropping systems on it. But he doesn't have any crops. He doesn't even mow his lawn. He doesn't have anything going. I know where he works. He doesn't have anything going on his farm. Nothing but